Hello and welcome to the Voice of Liberty podcast. My name is Henry Conley, and as always, I'm glad to come to you live. So tonight, I wanted to talk about something a little different than what we normally talk about. And in some ways, it pertains to what's going on in Portland. In some ways, it pertains to what's going on in general in this country with the rise of fascism and authoritarian measures taken by the President of the United States. What I want to talk about is something called the Three Percenters and the Boogaloo movement and where they are right now. Now, for anybody that doesn't know what a three percenter is, three percenters are traditionally claimed to be a part of the far-right militia movement, a paramilitary group. They advocate for gun ownership rights. They are resistant to the U.S. Federal government's involvement in local affairs. They generally oppose the government. The Boogaloo movement, in case anybody else doesn't know what the Boogaloo movement is a push essentially for a new revolution, a new fight against the United States government. Now, both of these movements, the Three Percenters and the Boogaloo, they often find themselves talking about fighting against the fascist regime. They find themselves talking about fighting for the rights of the people. They find themselves screaming and wearing tactical gear. And I steal that term from a very popular YouTuber, Bo of the Fifth Column, tactical gear. You'll commonly find them in public wearing plate carriers, various different Velcroed on badges, of course, their camo, and slinging AR-15s and just about any other weapon they can possibly sling in brazen public displays. Now, I don't want this to be confused. I support the right to keep and bear arms, but I support the right with the responsibility of doing it smartly. But see, the Boogaloo boys, and as they like to call themselves, the Boog boys and Three Percenters, commonly like to preach about how if fascism comes to the United States and totalitarian style of government and authoritarian measures come to the United States of America, they will be there. They will be there. They will take on the government. They'll take on the police. They'll take on the military. They'll take on anybody. Fast forward now to Portland, where we have unmarked police vehicles kidnapping peaceful protesters, taking them to undisclosed locations and violating their rights. This very situation is fascist. This very situation is authoritarian, and this very situation is totalitarian. Three things that the Boog boys and the Three Percenters commonly say they are going to stand up and fight. They have their opportunity right here, right now in Portland. They got the President of the United States talking about sending them to Chicago and sending them to New Mexico and sending them to New York and Philadelphia. We are literally witnessing the President of the United States push for further fascist authoritarian measures. And where are the Boog boys? Where are the Three Percenters? See, There's been a lot of questions when the Boog movement started and when the Three Percenter movement started, if they would actually live up to their words and if they would actually stay true to what they were saying they would do. There are a lot of people that didn't actually believe they would go through with going toe-to-toe with the federal government. There's a lot of people that were very curious whether they would even, go toe-to-toe with local law enforcement. And again, here we are. We're sitting here seeing a perfect time for them to go toe-to-toe with the federal government. We're seeing a perfect time for them to go toe-to-toe with the local governments. We are seeing it. We're seeing the perfect time to have them stand up and protect the rights and freedoms of others. We're seeing the perfect time for them to take on the tyrannical government, for them to take on fascism. And they're nowhere to be found. These people, in their tactical gear and their plate carriers, slinging their AR-15s and carrying whatever other gun they want, they've suddenly disappeared off the map. Their fight to defend freedom, their fight to defend liberty, their fight to defend individual liberty Suddenly it doesn't matter. Suddenly it doesn't matter to them that people's rights are being violated. Suddenly this urge to take on the government has disappeared. And I have to ask why. And I think I found my answer. See, recently within the liberty movement, there's been a little bit of a issue, a little bit of a question as to who gets liberty and who doesn't get liberty. Some of the most popular right-leaning libertarians, and I say that with quotation marks around it, have had to step back and ask, I want to defend their rights, but can I know what their political stances are? Can I know if they're a communist or a socialist before I stand up and say that the federal government should not be going after them? Can I just find out what they were doing before the federal government went at them? Suddenly, we're seeing this situation where the individual rights and liberties of people is suddenly characterized by their economic standpoint or the political party they're a part of or what they believe in. They're not anarcho-capitalists. Apparently, they don't deserve rights or liberties according to some of these people. And I have a feeling that also applies to the 3%ers in the Boog movement. They don't want to stand up for the rights of communists. They don't want to stand up for the rights of socialists. Damn, they don't want to stand up for the rights of a Democrat or member of Antifa. No way. That's bad news for them. I mean, if it was one of their boys getting attacked, you can damn right be sure that they would be there. If it was a bunch of, right-leaning, gun-toting, red-blooded Americans getting attacked, man, they'd be right there. But turns out it's a bunch of people getting attacked that don't like the system as it sits. They don't like the injustices of the system. They don't like that systemic racism exists. They want to defund the police. They want to try and find a new way forward. In theory, these would all be things that the Boog movement and the 3%ers movement would be in favor of. But oddly enough, yet again, silent. So then I expand this idea and this question in my head. As this moves across the country, as Donald Trump, being the fascist he is, continues to expand the reach of the federal government into other cities, proactive arrests as they call them, who will stand up and defend? Who will be standing up to protect who? Yeah, there's this saying, and I'm going to quote it horribly, but there's this saying out there that says they came for the communists and I stayed silent because I wasn't a communist. They came for the trade unionists and I stayed silent because I wasn't a trade unionist. And it goes on to show that eventually they're going to come for you. And the people that you didn't stand up to protect were the ones that could have protected you. So I have a challenge to the Boog movement, and I have a challenge to the 3%ers movement. Put your money where your mouth is. If you're so tough and you're so awesome in your tactical gear, if your plate carriers are actually meant to do something, if the patches you wear represent something, if that constitutional basis for your existence means something, then go out there and prove it. Protect the people being kidnapped. Protect the people having their rights violated. Get out there and protect people. That's what you guys claim to want to do. It aggravates me because I'm watching individual liberties be violated, and I've preached for individual liberties for the entire time I've been in the Libertarian Party. Yet here are people that I support, people that I care about. Their rights and liberties are being violated, and suddenly there's silence. This can't happen in the United States. We are witnessing the rise of fascism in America. Whether you want to accept it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, it's happening. The tests, they went well. There was no pushback on the tests. We failed big time when the tests were happening. So the question is, now, what do we do? Obviously, the Boog movement's sleeping. Obviously, the 3%ers don't give a shit. So it's time for us to step up. It's time for us to be out there in the streets and to ensure that those who are having their rights violated, those who are being illegally detained, their voice is heard. because they're the faces of the movement. The movement started big time this year because of George Floyd. It's expanded beyond that, though. This is unfathomable. I just have to think of one phrase. John F. Kennedy said, if peaceful revolution is made impossible, then violent revolution is inevitable. So pick which side of history we want to be on. Do we want the change in the country to come via a peaceful revolution? Or do we want this to get violent? It's time to stand up. It's time to be a voice of liberty. And it's time to awaken the voice of liberty. Because this can't go on any longer. The spirit of America cannot die in the darkness of fascism.